The Gillian Company is on the 7th floor, behind swinging doors bound in platinum. In the corner is a tall display in a triangular showcase. It seems to contain every fancy bottle and box that's ever been designed. There are perfumes in tall, thin bottles that look as if a breath would blow them over, and perfumes in little pastel phials tied with ducky satin bows like little girls at a dancing class. The cream of the crop seems to be something very small and simple in a squat amber bottle. It's labeled Gillian Regal, the champagne of perfumes. It's definitely the stuff to get.
I'd like to see Mr. DeRace Kingsley. Here's my card.
Have you an appointment?
No appointment.
It's very difficult to see Mr. Kingsley without an appointment, Mr. Marlowe.
The name of this tall, lean, dark-haired lovely is, according to the titled embossed plaque on her desk, Miss Adrienne Fromsett.
What is the nature of your business, Mr. Marlowe?
Personal.
I see. Does Mr. Kingsley know you, Mr. Marlowe?
I don't think so. He may have heard my name. You might say I'm from Lieutenant McGee.
And does Mr. Kingsley know Lieutenant McGee?
I'm hoping he does, but maybe the best way to find out is to ask him.
Mr. Kingsley is in conference. I'll send your card in when I have an opportunity.
Thank you. I'll wait.
I sit and light a cigarette. Half an hour and 3 or 4 cigarettes later, a door opens and 3 men come out laughing. The men shake hands heartily, and 2 of them leave. The third man drops the grin off his face and looks as if he's never grinned in his life.
Any calls, Miss Fromsett?
Mr. Marlowe to see you, from Lieutenant McGee. His business is personal.
Never heard of him.
It seems like the perfect moment to introduce myself.
This gentleman is Mr. Marlowe.
You want to see me?
If you're Mr. DeRace Kingsley.
Who the hell do you think I was?
He's about 6'2", and not much of it is soft. His eyes are stone gray with flecks of cold light in them. His manner says he is very tough to get along with.
And who, incidentally, is Lieutenant McGee?
He's just a fellow I know.
I'm fascinated. Anything else you would care to let drop about him?
Well, they call him Violets McGee on account of he chews little throat passels that smell of violets. He's a big man with soft silvery hair and a cute little mouth made to kiss babies with.
I don't like your manner.
That's all right. I'm not selling it.
I'll give you exactly 3 minutes. God knows why.
He burns his way past Miss Fromsett's desk to his door, yanks it open and lets it swing in my face. Miss Fromsett likes that. She likes it very much.
Listen, I'm a businessman. I don't fool around. Your card says you're a licensed detective. Show me something to prove it.
I get out my wallet and hand him things to prove it. He lights a cigar. He doesn't offer me one. He takes his time. He doesn't care about mine.
No, I don't know, McGee. I know Sheriff Peterson. I asked for the name of a reliable man to do a job. I suppose you are the man. I guess you might do. Just don't get flip with me, and remember, when I hire a man, he's my man. He does exactly what I tell him, and he keeps his mouth shut, or he goes out fast. I hope I'm not too tough for you.
Why not leave that an open question?
What do you charge?
$25 a day in expenses, 8 cents a mile for my car.
Absurd, far too much. 15 a day flat, that's plenty. I'll pay the mileage within reason, the way things are now. But no joyriding.
I say nothing. He seems a little surprised that I say nothing.
I haven't hired you yet, but if I do, the job is absolutely confidential. No talking it over with your cop friends. Is that understood?
Just what do you want done, Mr. Kingsley?
What do you care? You do all kinds of detective work, don't you?
Not all kinds. Only the fairly honest kinds. For one thing, I don't do divorce business, and I get 100 down as a retainer from strangers.
Well, well.
And as for you being too tough for me, most of the clients start out either by weeping down my shirt or bawling me out to show me who's boss. But usually they end up being very reasonable if they're still alive.
Well, well. Do you lose very many of them?
Not if they treat me right.
Have a cigar.
I take one and put it in my pocket.
I haven't been called down like that in 4 years. I want you to find my wife.
Okay. I'll find your wife.
I think you will, at that. She's been gone a whole month, from a cabin we have in the mountains near Puma Point.
I know Puma Point.
Our place is 3 miles from the village. It's on a private lake, Little Fawn Lake. My friends have cabins. I have a cabin, and a man called Bill Chess lives with his wife in another cabin, rent-free, and looks after the place. He's a disabled veteran with a pension. Anyway, my wife went up in the middle of May, came down twice for weekends, was due down the 12th of June for a party, and never showed up. I haven't seen her since.
What have you done about it?
Nothing. I haven't even been up there.
Why?
He opens a locked drawer and hands me a folded paper. It's a postal telegraph form. The wire had been filed at El Paso on June 14th at 9:19 a.m.
Am crossing to get Mexican divorce. Stop. Will marry Chris. Stop. Good luck and goodbye. Crystal.
And then there's this.
It's a large and very clear snapshot. A man and a woman are sitting on the sand under a beach umbrella. The woman, who wears a very daring sharkskin bathing suit, is a slim blonde, young and shapely and smiling. The man, who smiles at the camera with a practiced smile, is a dark, handsome lad with fine shoulders and legs, sleek dark hair and white teeth. 6 feet of a standard type of homewrecker.
That's my wife, Crystal, and that's Chris Lavery.
All right. What's the catch?
The wire surprised me only mildly. Crystal and I have been washed up for years. She lives her life and I live mine. She has her own money and plenty. She plays around, and Lavery was one of her playmates. I might have been a little surprised that she would actually marry him, because the guy is nothing but a professional chaser. But the picture looked all right so far.
And then?
Nothing for 2 weeks. Then the Prescott Hotel in San Bernardino got in touch with me and said a Packard Clipper registered to Crystal Grace Kingsley at my address was unclaimed in their garage, and what about it? I sent them a check and told them to keep it. I figured if they had gone in a car at all, they had gone in Lavery's car. The day before yesterday, however, I met Lavery in front of the athletic club down on the corner here. He said he didn't know where Crystal was. He also said he hadn't gone away with her, hadn't seen her in 2 months, hadn't had any communication with her of any kind.
You believed him?
He's a no-good son of a bitch who thinks it's smart to lay his friends' wives and brag about it. I feel he'd have been tickled pink to stick it into me and break it off that he had got my wife to run away with him and leave me flat.
Maybe she tossed him out of his can and hurt him in his Casanova complex.
Maybe. You'll have to prove me wrong. But there's another and very worrying angle. I have a good job here, but a job is all it is. I can't stand scandal. I'd be out of here in a hurry if my wife got mixed up with the police.
Police?
My wife occasionally finds time to lift things in department stores. Usually when she's been hitting the bottle too hard, which is far too often. So far, I've been able to keep the police from filing charges, but if something like that happened in a strange city, who knows?
Well, I think we might almost throw the shoplifting angle out of this for the time being. There are too many other things that could have happened. That she did go away with Lavery and they split up. That she went away with some other guy and the wire's a gag. That she drank herself over the edge and is holed up in some private sanatorium. That she got into some jam we have no idea of. That she met with foul play.
Don't say that.
Why not? You gotta consider it. I get a very vague idea of Mrs. Kingsley, that she is young, pretty, reckless, and wild. That she drinks and does dangerous things when she drinks. That she's a sucker for men and might take up with a stranger who might turn out to be a crook. Does that fit?
Every word of it.
How much money would she have with her?
She likes to carry enough. She has her own bank and her own bank account. She could have any amount of money.
There are more angles to this than I can see just now. But I'll start by talking to Lavery and then taking a run up to Little Fawn Lake and asking questions there. I'll need Lavery's address and a note to your man in charge of the mountain place.
Miss Fromstead will give you Lavery's address, and I'll write a note to Bill.
There's just one other thing.
The $100 down?
That's just something I said when you were tramping on me. It's just... You're not holding anything back, are you? Anything important?
No, I'm not holding anything back. I'm worried, and I want to know where she is. I'm damn worried. If you get anything at all, call me any time, day or night.
He writes me a note. Miss Fromsett gives me Lavery's address, but with some reluctance. I get the impression that Mr. Chris Lavery is not a pleasant thought to her, but I have other things to worry about. Soon, I'm heading for the aforementioned Mr. Lavery's residence in Bay City. I work on the knocker. Nothing. I push the bell and hear a ring inside, not very far off. Nothing. A neat black Cadillac coupe comes out of the garage of the house across the way. A thin man in dark glasses looks sharply at me, as if I hadn't any business to be there. He's probably got nothing to do with what I'm after, but who knows? I give him my steely glare and do some more hammering on the knocker.
You're making a hell of a lot of noise.
Mr. Lavery?
What if I am?
My card.
I slip it through the grill.
I'm working for Derace Kingsley.
To hell with both of you.
Do that again, and I'll throw you clear across the street.
Don't be childish. You know perfectly well I'm going to talk to you, and you're going to talk to me.
I take the telegram out of my pocket and hold it in front of his bright brown eyes. He reads it morosely.
Oh, for Christ's sake. Come on in, then.
I sit opposite him and look him over. He's a nice piece of beef, but to me, that's all he is. I can understand the women would think he was something to yell for.
Look, I know what that wire says, but it's the bunk. I didn't go to El Paso with Crystal Kingsley. I haven't seen her for a long time, long before the date of that wire. I haven't had any contact with her. I told Kingsley that.
He didn't have to believe you.
Why would I lie to him?
Why wouldn't you?
Look, it might seem so to you, but you don't know her. Kingsley has no strings on her. If he doesn't like the way she behaves, he has a remedy. These proprietary husbands make me sick.
So you don't have any idea of marrying her?
I've thought of it, yes. She has money. Money is always useful, but it would be too tough a way to make it. So tell me, do you hire yourself out to dig up dirt? Doing well at it?
Look, Mr. Lavery, we don't have to get into a fight. Kingsley thinks you know where his wife is, but won't tell him, either out of meanness or motives of delicacy.
Which way would he like it?
He doesn't care so long as he gets the information. He doesn't care a great deal what you and she do together, or whether she divorces him or not. He just wants to feel sure that she isn't in trouble of any kind.
Trouble? What kind of trouble?
Maybe you won't know the kind of trouble he's thinking of.
Tell me. I'd just love to hear about some kind of trouble I don't know about.
No time to talk business, but always time for a wisecrack.
Go climb up your thumb, wise guy.
This wire has to mean something.
It's probably just a gag. She's full of little tricks like that. All of them silly, and some of them vicious. I stood her up one weekend. I was sick of her.
I don't like that one. I'd like it better if you did go to El Paso with her, and had a fight and split up. Could you tell it that way?
I told you I didn't go anywhere with her. Not anywhere. Can't you remember that?
I'll remember it when I believe it.
All right. Out you go. I've had enough of your third-degree tripe. You're wasting my time and your own. If it's worth anything.
Not a lot, but at least I'm being paid for this. By the way, what line of business are you in?
What the hell business is it of yours?
None. But of course I can always find out.
Yeah. So long, Snooper. And don't bother to come back. I won't be at home.
If I do come back, it won't be just to swap gags. It'll be because I find out something that needs talking over.
So you still think I'm lying?
I think you may have something on your mind. I've looked at too many faces not to know.
Well, next time, bring somebody to drive you home. In case you land on your fanny and knock your brains out. Now get out!
Sure. So long, handsome.
I decided to take a look at the house across the way. On the gatepost was a bronze tablet which said, Albert S. Almore, M.D. I wonder idly how well he knows Lavery, since theirs were the only 2 houses in the block. But being a doctor, he wouldn't tell me anything about him anyway. And now here's the black Cadillac back again. And Dr. Almore really doesn't like the fact that I'm studying his gatepost. He's staring at me with a sharp frown on his thin face. So I stroll back to my car, and he drives his car back into his garage. I figure it's worth waiting. There's something about this guy's behavior that intrigues me. I could see Dr. Almore through his window. He's on the phone, getting more and more agitated. Then he makes another call, and another. Every half minute he looks out. He's waiting, and I'm waiting with him for no reason at all. Now it's getting interesting. A green sedan stopped outside the good doctor's. A big man with dusty blonde hairs got out. I think I can guess what's going to happen next.
Waiting for somebody?
I don't know. Am I?
I'll ask the questions.
Well, I'll be damned. So that's the answer to the pantomime.
What pantomime?
Nervous Nellie in the telephone.
Let me see your driver's license.
You fellows ever flash a buzzer, or is acting tough all the identification you need?
DeGarmo, Detective Lieutenant.
Pleased to meet you, Lieutenant.
Skip it. Now tell me why you're here casing Almore's place.
I'm not casing Almore's place. I never heard of Dr. Almore, and I don't know any reason why I should want to case his house.
What's your grift, then? Or folks hire you? We don't like peepers down here.
Is that so?
The last guy that tried it ended up on the road gang, sweetheart.
I bet it's good, if only I could guess. Tried what?
Tried to put the bite on him.
Dr. Almore looks like an easy man to bite. Let's put it this way. I don't know Dr. Almore, never heard of him, and I'm not interested in him. I just read his bronze tablet. I'm down here visiting a friend and looking at the view.
Straight goods?
Straight goods.
Hell. The guy's screwy. He ought to see a doctor. Now go on. Beat it. Stay off our reservation and you won't make any enemies.
On the way back to Los Angeles, I listened to my thoughts. They move fitfully in and out, like Dr. Almore's thin, nervous hands pulling at the edge of his curtains.
I saw Lavery.
What did he say?
He told me just enough dirt to sound frank. I still like the idea that they quarreled and split up and that he hopes to fix up with her yet.
Then he must know where she is.
He might, but it doesn't follow. By the way, a rather curious thing happened to me on Lavery Street. Dr. Almore seemed very unhappy I was there.
Would that be Dr. Albert Almore?
Yeah.
He was Crystal's doctor for a time. He came to the house several times when she was... well, when she'd been over-drinking. I thought him a little too quick with a hypodermic needle. His wife... let me see, there was something about his wife. Oh, yes. She committed suicide.
When?
I don't remember. Quite a long time ago. I never knew them socially. What are you going to do now?
I'm going up to Little Fawn Lake, even though it's a little late in the day to start. I see a sign. Little Fawn Lake, private road, no trespassing. It's only a few hours from the city, but it's a different world. I crawl carefully around huge, bare granite rocks and past a little waterfall and through a maze of black oak trees and ironwood and manzanita and silence. Beyond the sign, the road winds for a couple of 100 yards, and then suddenly below me is a small oval lake, deep in trees and rocks and wild grass, like a drop of dew caught in a curled leaf. Along the lake, a large redwood cabin overhangs the water, and farther along, each well separated from the others, are two other cabins. I get out of the car and start towards the nearest cabin. Somewhere behind it, an axe thuds.
He must have heard me. A heavily built man with a harsh face and swarthy skin comes into view carrying a double-bitted axe. He limps as he walks, giving his right leg a little kick out with each step. In spite of his weathered appearance, he looks like a drinker. There's a bright glitter in his eyes.
Mr. Bill Chess?
That's me.
I'm a note here from Mr. Kingsley.
Okay, Mr. Marlowe. So, you want to see Kingsley's cabin, huh? Glad to show you. He ain't selling, for Christ's sake.
He might. Everything's for sale in California.
Well, ain't that the truth, though? Well, that's his over there, the redwood job. Cost about $8,000, and that's money for a mountain cabin.
How about electric light and telephone?
Electric light, sure, no phone.
Anybody living there now?
Nope. Mrs. Kingsley was here a few weeks back. She went down to hell back any day, I guess. Didn't he say?
Why? Does she go with the cabin?
Very funny. Yeah, it's a swell cabin.
The bed's comfortable?
How would I know if the beds are comfortable?
I don't know why you wouldn't know. I can find out for myself.
Yeah, you think I can't smell a dick when I meet one? Nuts to you, pal, and nuts to Kingsley. So he hires himself a dick to come up here and see am I wearing his pajamas, huh? Now listen, Jack. I might have a stiff leg and all, but the women I could get...
Whoa, you're slipping your clutch. I didn't come here to inquire into your love life. I never saw Mrs. Kingsley. I never saw Mr. Kingsley until this morning. What the hell's the matter with you?
He rubs the back of his hand viciously across his mouth, as if he wants to hurt himself. His hands are shaking.
Sorry, Mr. Marlowe. I was out on the roof last night, and I got a hangover like 7 Swedes. I've been up here alone for a month, and it's got me talking to myself. A thing happened to me.
Anything a drink would help?
You got one?
He brings glasses from his cabin, and we sit there in the silence as I pour him a stiff drink of rye.
Man, that's from the right bottle. I guess a guy gets the blues up here all alone. No company, no real friends, no wife. Especially no wife. She left me. She left me a month ago. Friday the 12th of June, a day I'll remember.
I stiffen. Friday the 12th was the day Mrs. Crystal Kingsley was supposed to have come into town for a party.
But you don't want to hear about this.
It's none of my business, but if it would make you feel any better.
Thanks. You know, Muriel was one swell kid. I met her in a joint in Riverside just 1 year and 3 months ago. Maybe not the kind of joint where a guy would expect to meet a girl like her, but that's how it happened. We got married. I loved her. I was married to as neat a little blonde as ever you clapped an eye on, and all the time I'm nuts. I go for that.
He points to the Kingsley cabin. It's turning the color of oxblood in the late afternoon light.
Hell, you think if I had to jump off the dock, I'd go a little ways from home and pick me a change in types at least. But little round heels over there ain't even that. She's a blonde, like Muriel, same size and weight, same type, almost the same color eyes. But brother, how different from then on in. She was giving it out, but I didn't have to take. You asked me if the beds over there were comfortable. I was just too full remembering. Yeah, the bed I was in was comfortable. I came back across the dam. I'm as smooth as a new piston head. I'm getting away with something. Except I didn't get away with anything at all. When I got home, Muriel told me things about myself I didn't even imagine. After that, I felt too mean to stay even half sober. Along about 4 a.m., I finally got back home again and Muriel had gone.
She left you?
That very night. Nothing but a note in the bureau and some cold cream on a pillow. Here.
I'm sorry, Bill, but I'd rather be dead than live with you any longer. Muriel.
I've not heard from her in a whole month. Not a single word. Maybe she's with some other guy. I hope he treats her better than I did. better show you Kingsley's cabin.
There aren't many signs of somebody leaving at short notice. It's all neat and clean. Even the kitchen is in apple pie order. We go into the master bedroom. One whole side of the room consists of closets with sliding doors. I slide one open and peek inside.
So why do you want to look at the lady's clothes?
Reasons? For instance, Mrs. Kingsley didn't go home when she left here. Her husband hadn't seen her since. He doesn't know where she is.
So you are a dick. The first guess is always right. Boy, am I a smart little egg opening up to you.
I didn't ask you to take your heart out and squeeze it for me. And Kingsley doesn't have to know his wife made a pass at you, unless there's a lot more behind this than I can see now.
The hell with you.
All right, to hell with me. Any chance your wife and Kingsley's wife went away together? Maybe they could have had a fight and made up and cried down each other's necks. Then Mrs. Kingsley might have driven your wife down the hill.
Nope. They left the weeps out of Muriel. And if she did want to cry on a shoulder, she wouldn't have picked little round heels. And as for transportation, Muriel has a Ford of her own. She couldn't drive mine easily on account of the way the controls are switched over for my stiff leg.
It was just a passing thought.
If any more like that pass you, let them go right on.
Look, pal, I'm working hard to think you're a fundamentally nice guy. Help me out a little, can't you?
Boy, I can brighten up anyone's afternoon. Want to walk back around the lake?
Sure, if your leg will stand it. I ask him about Lavery. He admits to having seen him once. Won't say more than that. But then, Mrs. Kingsley clearly has plenty of male friends. We're at the end of the lake now, and we walk out onto a little pier. I look down.
Any fish in the lake?
Some smart old bastards at trout.
So what's that down there? Looks like some kind of underwater flooring.
Used to be a boat landing before the dam was raised.
Uh-huh.
That lifted the water so far, the old landing was 6 feet under.
The air is peaceful and calm and sunny, and holds a quiet you don't get in cities. Then suddenly Bill Chess clutches my arm.
Oh my God, look there.
I look down with him. Something waves languidly out of the darkness on the edge of the submerged landing. Something which looks far too much like a human arm.
My God. My God.
He finds a big rock, lifts it high, and throws it into the water. For a moment, the waters are confused, boiling. Then the depths clear again. Released from the old wooden landing, something moves that's not a board. It breaks surface, casually, lightly, without haste. I see a wave of dark blonde hair straighten out in the water and hold still for a brief instant and then swirl into a tangle again.
Sweet Christ. It's Muriel.
I go and fetch the local sheriff. He has large ears and friendly eyes, and he looks as dangerous as a squirrel and much less nervous. On his vehicle, there's a white card which reads, "Voters, attention, keep Jim Patton sheriff. He's too old to go to work." I like everything about this guy. We drive back to the lake.
Bill! Bill! What's going on?
I had to do it. I had to get a rope and go down in the water and pull the thing out.
Why?
I don't know why. But I tried to the shore and here it is.
There's a horrible, sickening smell in the air. The thing that had been a woman lies face down on the boards.
I couldn't leave her. It's down there in the lake.
So, what'd you say, Mr. Morrow?
About what?
About cause and time of death?
Not a lot you can tell just by looking.
Looks drowned to me, all right, but you can't always tell.
You get many like this up here, then?
Only honest-to-God murder I ever had. Funny place for a body to be. No current here to mention, but what there is would be to art the dam.
She did it herself, you darn fool. Muriel was a fine swimmer. She dived down in and swam under the boards there and just breathed water in. Had to, no other way.
Something was said about a note.
Oh, yeah, it's here in my jacket. Go on, read it if you must. Everybody wants to read it.
It doesn't seem to have any date.
No, she left it a month ago, June 12th.
Left you once before, didn't she?
Yeah. I got drunk and stayed with a whore. Muriel was gone a week and came back all prettied up. She said she had to get away for a while.
Sure. Note left that time?
No.
This note here looks middling old.
So what? I've carried it for a month. Who told you she left me before? Who told you?
I forget. You know how it is in a place like this. June 12th, you say she left, or you thought she left. Were the folks across the lake up here then?
Ask this Snoopy guy. If he didn't already spill his guts to you.
Mr. Morrow here didn't tell me anything, Bill, except how the body come up out of the water and who it was.
Okay, Mrs. Kingsley was here.
But she went down the hill the same day.
Yes, what does it matter? Muriel left the note, she went away. Why all these questions? Take me in, you son of a bitch!
Hey, Bill, listen.
Sure I did it, I drowned her. That's what you want, isn't it? She was my girl and I loved her. I'm a heel, always been a heel. But just the same, I loved her. Maybe you guys wouldn't understand it. Just don't bother to try. So take me in, damn you!
I dream I am far down in the depths of icy green water with a corpse under my arm. The corpse has long blonde hair that keeps floating in front of my face. An enormous fish with bulging eyes and a bloated body swims around, leering like an elderly lecher. Just as I am about to burst from lack of air, the corpse comes alive under my arm and gets away from me. And then I am fighting with a fish, and the corpse is rolling over and over in the water, spinning its long hair and... I'd checked in and fallen asleep. Now I wake up with a mouthful of sheet. I look at the clock. It's still early. I realize that before I return to the city and Mr. DeRace Kingsley, I want to take a look at the chess cabin. The front door of the cabin is locked. There is no breeze, and the trees are as quiet as their shadows. I try a knife blade between the two halves of the small window. The window swings back in the darkness. I climb up and let myself down into the room. A blazing flashbeam hits me square in the eyes.
I'd rest right there, son. You must be all tuckered out.
I couldn't sleep.
Me neither. What's on your mind, son? Besides breaking and entering.
I had an idea. It looked pretty good for a while, but I guess I can learn to forget it.
Sit down. I'm a mite curious about you, son. I hope you don't mind me calling you son. I hadn't ought to be so familiar, but I got myself in the habit and I can't seem to shake it.
Call me what you like. I'm not sensitive.
You see, there's a mess of detectives in the L.A. phone book, but only one of them is called Marlowe. You tell him who hired you?
DeRace Kingsley. It's Tracy's wife. She skipped out on him a month ago. She's supposed to have gone away with a man. She started from here, so I started from here.
You don't have any interest in Bill Chess at all?
None whatever.
I guess you guys do a lot of divorce business. Kind of smelly work, to my notion. Still, Kingsley wouldn't have asked for help from the police to find his wife, would he?
Hardly. He knows her too well.
None of what you've been saying don't hardly explain you're wanting to search Bill's cabin.
I'm just a great guy to poke around.
Hello. You can do better than that.
Say I'm interested in Bill Chess, then. But only because he's in trouble in rather a pathetic case. If he murdered his wife, there's something here to point that way. If he didn't, there's something here to point that way, too.
As for instance, what kind of thing?
Clothes, personal jewelry, toilet articles, whatever a woman takes with her when she goes away, not intending to come back.
But she didn't go away, son.
Then the stuff would still be here. But if it was still here, Bill would have noticed she hadn't taken it. But if he murdered her, then he would have to get rid of the things she ought to have taken with her. Of course, his biggest problem is her Ford car. Sinking it in the lake would be dangerous, but he couldn't burn it or bury it. Could he even drive it?
Sure, he can't bend his right leg at the knee, so he couldn't use a foot brake very handy, but he could get by with a handbrake.
So, the chances are he hid it in the woods within walking distance of here. And walking distance for him would not be very far.
For a fella that claims not to be interested, you're doing some pretty close figuring on all this.
If the car was found, it would be better for Muriel's stuff to be found in it. That would give him a couple of outs. Let's say that she was murdered by some unknown party who fixed things to implicate Bill when and if the murder was discovered.
There's still that little matter of the note to be got over. What I like is that she did plan to go away and did write the note, but he caught her before she got clear and saw her red and finished her off. Then he would have had to do all the things we've been talking about.
I never met her. What kind of girl was she?
A mighty cute little blonde when she fixed herself up. She kind of let herself go with Bill. A quiet girl with a face that kept its secrets. I'm going to tell you something I shouldn't tell you. Don't know why. Maybe because you can only keep so many things to yourself. There was a Los Angeles copper named DeSoto up here about 6 weeks back. A big roughneck with damn poor manners. Nobody liked him and nobody opened up to him much. He had a photograph with him, and he was looking for a woman called Mildred Haviland, he said. He said he had information the woman was staying up here. This big bruiser showed his picture to darn near everybody in town before he showed it to me. That made me kind of sore.
She looked like Muriel Chess?
Something like, but not enough to be sure by any manner of means. I asked him what this Mildred Haviland was wanted for. He said it was police business. I said I was in that way of business myself, in an ignorant, countrified kind of way. Still, I guess I done wrong to tell him I didn't know anybody that looked like his little picture. I'll thank you to respect this confidence, Mr. Marlowe. You done right nicely in your figuring, too. Not far from here, there's a bunch of log cabins that's been falling down ever since I recall. Round at the back, there's a woodshed which sometimes they used for a garage.
Muriel's car was there?
Yep. And 2 unlocked suitcases in the car, packed with clothes and packed kind of hasty, I thought. Women's clothes. The point is, son, no stranger would have known about that place.
Then he puts his hand into his jerkin and brings out a small twist of tissue paper.
Take a look at this.
What lies on the tissue paper is a thin gold chain with a tiny lock. The gold has been snipped through, leaving the lock intact. There is white powder sticking to both chain and paper.
Where would you guess I found that?
I take the chain, I moisten my finger, touch the powder, and taste it.
In a can or box of confectioner's sugar. The chain's an anklet. Some women never take them off, like wedding rings. Whoever took this one off didn't have a key. But you know something?
What's that, son?
The cut ends don't fit together. It's too short, look.
Son, I don't have your eyes.
Do you mind if I take a look inside that box of sugar?
It's in the kitchen. I'll come with you.
I lift the box up and empty it onto a newspaper. At the bottom, another twist of white tissue.
Guess I didn't go deep enough.
I shake the tissue clean and unwind it. It contains a tiny gold heart, no larger than a woman's little fingernail.
Well, well.
I think there's some engraving on the back.
Take my torch. I couldn't read it if I had a darn microscope.
That's in script. It reads, Al to Mildred, June 28th, 1938. With all my love.
Tell me what you're thinking, son. See if it's the same as me.
Al to Mildred. Al somebody to Mildred Haviland. Mildred Haviland was Muriel Chess. Muriel Chess was dead 2 weeks after a cop named DeSoto had been looking for her.
Looks like maybe I owe this DeSoto party an apology, don't it?
If you ever see him.
Don't tell me, son. Let me guess all for myself that you got a brand new idea about it.
Yeah. Bill Chess didn't murder his wife.
No?
She was murdered by somebody out of her past. Somebody who had lost track of her and then found it again. And found her married to another man and didn't like it. Somebody who hated and could dissimulate. Who could persuade her to go away with him. And when everything was ready and the note was written, took her around the throat and gave her what he thought was coming her way. And put her in the lake and went his way. Like it?
Well, it does make things kind of complicated, don't you think? I'm not sure myself Bill Chess is in the clear. But there ain't anything impossible about it. Not one bit impossible.
When you get tired of it, let me know. I'll have something else.
I'll just be doggone sure you will.
Meantime, I have a job to do and a missing wife to find.
Gilliland Company.
Miss Fromsett?
Mr. Marlowe?
You remember me.
I remember everybody.
Could you remember to put me through to Mr. Kingsley?
I could try.
It's the next day and I'm back in the city. I tell Kingsley about Muriel Chess's body in the lake, and I tell him Bill has confessed. I have to tell him about all that, because it means I'll have to testify at the inquest.
That's bad. Very bad.
Were your wife and Muriel Chess friendly?
I guess so. Crystal's easy enough to get along with most of the time. I hardly knew Muriel Chess.
Did you ever know anybody called Mildred Haviland?
Who?
Mildred Haviland.
No. Is there any reason why I should?
Every question I ask, you ask another right back. No. There isn't any reason why you should know Mildred Haviland, especially if you hardly knew Muriel Chess.
It's Crystal I asked you to find out about.
That's why I went today to the Prescott Hotel in San Bernardino.
What did you find out?
She was there all right. And Lavery met her there. The hop who gave me the dope brought Lavery into it himself without any prompting from me. Lavery had dinner with her and went with her in a cab to the railway station, leaving the car.
Well, I ought to have known he was lying. I got the impression he was surprised when...
Welcome to Thinking Out Louder. That's Thinking Out Louder BBC radio drama. Thank you.
I told him about the telegram from El Paso. What do you plan to do now?
Go up against Lavery again, of course.
I agree. This other is really no business of ours, is it?
The air is clearer than yesterday. The morning round here is full of peace. No Dr. Almore peering, no Lieutenant DeGarmo trying to put the frighteners on me. I punch the doorbell.
Then I see that the front door is not quite shut. If Lavery's away, maybe I can take a chance and frisk the joint. I stand inside and listen. In the silence, time passes. I decide it's safe to move.
Excuse me. Please don't move.
I freeze. She's a slender woman of uncertain age, with untidy brown hair, a scarlet mess of a mouth, and too much rouge on her cheekbones. She wears a purple hat, which is doing its best to hang on to the side of her head. Her right hand is wrapped around the butt of a small automatic. She points the gun at me and comes steadily on. When she's close enough to be confidential, she points the gun at my stomach.
All I wanted was my rent. The place seems well taken care of. Nothing broken. He's always been a good, tidy, careful tenant. I just didn't want him to get too far behind with the rent.
How far behind is he?
3 months. $240. He promised me a check this morning, over the telephone. I mean, he promised to give it to me this morning.
Over the telephone? This morning?
Yes.
The idea is to get close enough to make a side swipe at the gun, knock it outwards, and then jump in fast before she could bring it back in line. I've never had a lot of luck with the technique, but you have to try it once in a while. This looks like a time to try it.
So, you're the owner?
Why, certainly. I'm Mrs. Fallbrook. Who did you think I was? And who are you, if I may inquire?
I just came about the car payment. The door was open just a teensy-weensy bit, and I kind of shoved in. I don't know why.
You mean Mr. Lavery is behind in his car payments?
A little. Not a great deal.
I'm all set now. I have the reach, and I ought to have the speed. I start to...
You know, it's funny about this gun. I found it on the stairs. Nasty, oily things, aren't they? And the stair carpet is a very nice gray chenille. Quite expensive.
And she hands me the gun.
Well, of course, it's much easier for you. About the car, I mean. You can just take it away if you have to. But taking a house with nice furniture in it isn't so easy. It takes time and money to evict a tenant. There's apt to be bitterness, and things get damaged, sometimes on purpose.
I hardly
The
hear
rug
what she
on this
says.
floor costs
The gun
over
has my interest.
$200 a second
I break the
hand.
magazine out. It's empty. I look into the breech. That's empty, too. I sniff the muzzle. It reeks.
Has it been fired? I certainly hope not.
Any reason why it should have been fired?
Well, it was lying on the stairs. After all, people do fire them.
How true that is. But Mr. Lavery probably had a hole in his pocket. He isn't home, is he?
Oh, no. And I don't think it's very nice of him. He promised me the check, and I walked over...
When was it you phoned him?
Why, yesterday evening.
He must have been called away. Look, Mrs. Fallbrook, let's not kid around anymore. Not that I don't love it, but you didn't shoot him, did you? On account of he owed you 3 months' rent?
Why, what a perfectly horrid suggestion. I don't think you're nice at all. I thought you said the gun hadn't been fired.
All guns have been fired sometime. All guns have been loaded sometime. This gun isn't loaded now.
Well, then...
Okay. My idea was wrong. Just a gag, anyway. Mr. Lavery was out, and you went through the house. Being the owner, you have the key, is that correct?
I have a right to see how things are kept.
And you're quite sure he isn't here?
Well, I didn't look under the beds or in the icebox. I called out from the stairs when he didn't answer my ring. I even peeped into the bedroom.
I think I ought to look around, if you don't mind. There might be something you missed.
I don't think that is necessary. This is my house. I'll thank you to leave now, Mr... Just what exactly is your name?
It doesn't matter.
But...
This gun, you know, is kind of odd.
I told you. I found it lying on the stairs. I don't know anything else about it. I don't know anything about guns at all. I never shot one in my life.
That's your story.
Oh, I shouldn't have done. It was horrid of me. I know it was. Mr. Lavery will be furious.
What you shouldn't have done was let me find out the gun was empty. Up till then, you were holding everything in the deck.
Why, you perfectly loathsome man. Don't you dare touch me. No, don't come near me. I won't stay in this house another minute with you. How dare you be so
Her
insulting?
voice snaps in midair like a rubber band.
Oh!
She puts her head down, purple hat and all, and runs for the door. The house now seems to be abnormally still. Something's all wrong with this scene. I shrug and go quietly up the stairs. I look in the bedroom. I look under the pillows. There's a handkerchief there. 2 small initials are stitched into the corner in red. A.F.
Adrienne Fromset.
But there's more. I look in the closet filled with clothes definitely not in Miss Fromset's style. The door next to the closet has to be the bathroom. It's locked. I force the lock with my knife blade and go in. Maybe I expected to find what I find.
In the bedroom, signs of a woman having spent the night there. Pajamas, face powder, perfume, and so on. Bathroom door locked, but I got it open. 3 empty shells on the floor, 2 shots in the wall, 1 in the window. Lavery was in the shower stall, naked and dead.
My God. Do you mean to say that he had a woman with him last night and she shot him this morning in the bathroom?
Just what do you think I was trying to say?
Please keep your voice down. I don't want any of the members to hear. But why in the bathroom?
Keep your own voice down. Why not in the bathroom? Could you think of a place where a man would be more completely off guard?
You don't know a woman shot him. I mean, you're not sure, are you?
No. The woman who spent the night there might have left, or there need not have been any woman at all. The appearances could just have been faked. You might have shot him.
What would I want to shoot him for? I'm a civilized man.
Okay. Does your wife own a gun?
You don't really think...
What does she?
Yeah, she does. A small automatic.
Anything like this one?
I reach in my pocket and put the gun in Kingsley's hand.
I don't know. It's like it, but I can't tell.
There's a serial number on the side.
Nobody remembers the serial numbers of guns.
I was hoping you wouldn't. It would have worried me very much.
That dirty rat. I suppose he ditched her, I suppose. We can't let the police have this gun. Crystal has a permit. The gun was registered, so they will know the number even if I don't. We can't let them have it.
But this Mrs. Fallbrook I told you about, the landlady, she knows I have the gun.
We'll have to chance that.
You're right. I don't think she's the kind to have anything to do with the police of her own free will.
Look, I know you're taking a risk. I intend to make it worth your while. If the setup were possible for suicide, I'd say put the gun back, but the way you tell it, it isn't.
But I can't cover up for a murder, even for a $10 bonus. The gun will have to go back.
I was thinking of more money than that. I was thinking of $500.
Just what did you expect to buy with that?
Is there anything in Lavery's place apart from the gun that might indicate Crystal had been there lately?
There may be a dozen things I don't know about. What kind of perfume does she use?
Oh. Gillian Regal, the champagne of perfume.
The bedroom reeks with it.
I'm talking about $500, a check for it right now. I hired you to protect me from scandal and, of course, to protect my wife if she needed it. Through no fault of yours, the chance to avoid scandal is pretty well shot. It's a question of my wife's neck now. I don't believe she shot Lavery. I have no reason for that belief, none at all. I just feel the conviction.
I'll go along with you up to a point. The setup down there is almost too good at first sight. She leaves clothes there she's probably been seen wearing and which can probably be traced. She leaves the gun on the stairs. It's hard to think she would be as dumb as that.
You give me a little heart.
But everything I've heard from you, as well as anybody else, indicates that your wife is a reckless, foolish woman. Even if there wasn't anything down there to point to your wife, the cops will eventually tie her up to Lavery. And then, the fact that she's been out of sight for a month will make the cops sit up and rub their horny palms with glee. And of course they'll trace the gun, and if it's her gun... No, don't try and pocket it.
I just thought...
Nope. The cops will have to have the gun. I may be a very smart guy, and very fond of you personally, but that gun killed a man. I am not suppressing vital evidence for anybody. Here's the only thing I can do. Go back down there and replace the gun and call the law. Write it out with them and let the chips fall where they have to. Are you game for that?
Yes. And the 500 stands.
I don't expect to earn it. You may as well understand that now. By the way, how well did Miss Fromsett know Lavery? Out of office hours.
His face tightens. He says nothing. I say nothing about the handkerchief.
What's this got to do with anything?
She looked kind of queer when I asked for his address when I was in your office. Like a romance that fouled out. Am I too blunt?
I'm sorry, but it's my business to ask all sorts of questions of all sorts of people.
Talk to her, then. As a matter of fact, she knew the Almores. She knew Elmore's wife, the one who killed herself. Lavery knew her, too. Could that have any possible connection with this business?
I don't know. You're in love with her, aren't you?
I'd marry her tomorrow if I could.
I don't think we need to waste time being cagey, Miss Fromsett. You know by now who I am and what I'm doing.
If only you knew what he'd stood from that little tramp. Well, perhaps I'd better leave that out. What was it you wanted to see me about?
Kingsley said you knew the Almores.
Yes, a bit. I met Mrs. Almore a few times.
Where?
At a friend's house. Why?
At Lavery's house?
I do hope you're not going to be insolent, Mr. Marlowe. But yes, at Chris Lavery's house. I used to go there. Once in a while, he had cocktail parties.
Then Lavery knew the Almores. Or Mrs. Elmore.
Yes, quite well.
And a lot of other women quite well, too. I don't doubt that. Did Mrs. Kingsley know her, too?
Yes, better than I did. They called each other by their first names. Mrs. Almore is dead, you know. She committed suicide about 1.5 years ago.
Any doubt about that?
Has this anything to do with what you're doing?
I don't know. But the first time I went to Lavery's, Dr. Elmore called a cop named DeGarmo just because I looked at his house. Why? And why would that Lieutenant DeGarmo think it smart to say the last fellow who tried to put the bite on Elmore ended up on the road gang? What's going on?
Well, I remember at one of Lavery's parties, this guy ribbed Mrs. Elmore about her husband's practice. The idea seemed to be that he was one of those doctors who run around all night with a case of loaded hypodermic needles, keeping the local fast set from having pink elephants for breakfast. Florence Elmore said she didn't care how her husband got his money as long as he got plenty of it and she had the spending of it. And this guy told her not to worry, it would always be a good racket, so long as he could get hold of enough dope. He asked Mrs. Elmore if they had many nice gangsters to dinner at their house. She threw a glass of liquor in his face.
Who wouldn't?
A few weeks later, Florence Elmore was found dead in the garage late at night. The door of the garage was shut and the car motor was running. She was lying on the concrete floor in pajamas with her head under a blanket, which was also over the exhaust pipe of the car. It was Chris Lavery who found her. Her husband was out. The office nurse had put Florence to bed earlier because she was drunk. Then she'd gone home, too.
How convenient. And the inquest?
There was no inquest and no autopsy. Nothing in the papers except that she had died suddenly. It was all hushed up.
Dr. Elmore has some very influential friends.
I guess so.
How much do you think Chris Lavery knew?
I'd like to think blackmail was one of those nasty little tricks Chris Lavery didn't quite run to.
This is the moment. I take the little perfumed rag out of my pocket.
Why do you want me to look at this, Mr. Marlowe?
I found it in Chris Lavery's house. Under the pillow, on his bed. It has initials on it.
It has 2 letters embroidered on it. They happen to be the same letters as my initials. Is that what you mean?
Right. He probably knows half a dozen women with the same initials.
So you're going to be nasty after all?
Is it your handkerchief or isn't it?
Yes, it's mine. I must have dropped it there. It's a long time ago. And I assure you I didn't put it under a pillow in his bed. And what's this perfume on it? Fly spray? Some cheap synthetic anyway. He must have given it to some woman who would like this kind of perfume.
I get a mental picture of the woman. And she doesn't quite go with Lavery.
I think you ought to do a little more work on your mental picture of Chris Lavery. Any touch of refinement you may have noticed is purely coincidental.
That's not a very nice thing to say about a dead man.
My God.
He was shot in his shower. And it looks as if it was done by some woman who'd spent the night there. He'd just been shaving. The woman left a gun on the stairs and this handkerchief on the bed.
And did you expect me to be able to give you information about this, too?
Look, Miss Fromsett, I'd like to be smooth and distant and subtle about all this, but nobody will let me.
When was he shot?
This morning, I suppose. Not long after he got up.
That would probably have been quite late. Quite a few people know I was in the office by 8:30.
I didn't think you shot him.
Awfully kind of you. But it is my handkerchief, isn't it? Although not my perfume. But I don't suppose policemen, or private detectives for that matter, are very sensitive to quality in perfume.
He was shot at 5 or 6 times and missed all but twice. It was a pretty grim scene, I should think. There was a lot of hate on one side of it, or a pretty cold-blooded mind.
He was quite easy to hate. And poisonously easy to love. Women, even decent women, make such ghastly mistakes about men.
All you're telling me is that you once thought you loved him, but not anymore, and that you didn't shoot him.
Yes. I'm sure you'll respect the confidence. Poor, egotistical, cheap, nasty, handsome, treacherous guy. Dead and cold and done with. No, Mr. Marlowe, I didn't shoot him. Does Mr. Kingsley know?
Yes.
Does he know about this Senate rag?
Nobody knows about that except you and me and whoever put it there.
So do you have any idea who did it?
Ideas, but that's all they are. I'm afraid the police are going to find it simple. Some of Mrs. Kingsley's clothes are hanging in Lavery's closet. And when they know the whole story, including what happened at Little Fawn Lake, I'm afraid they're just going to reach for the handcuffs. You have to find her first, but that won't be hard for them.
Crystal Kingsley. So he can't be spared, even that.
Of course, it could be an entirely different motivation. It could all revolve around somebody like Dr. Elmore.
If only. What about the handkerchief?
If it was mine, I'd wash the cheap scent out of it.
Thank you.
Thanks for talking to me, Miss Fawcett. Just one thing.
Of course.
It's just a thought. But Dr. Elmore's office nurse, did you ever meet her?
Several times.
Do you remember her name?
I think it was Mildred something.
Mildred Haviland, maybe?
That sounds likely.
Thank you, Miss Fawcett. There are so many dames in this case that my head is bursting. There's every indication that Crystal Kingsley is crazy enough to kill Lavery and leave her fingerprints all over the place. Case open and closed as far as the police are concerned. But there are so many unanswered questions. Take the late Muriel Chess, the lady in the lake. It was probably Mildred Haviland who was involved in a death so full of questions that any number of people might have wanted her dead. Dr. Elmore among the principal suspects. Albert Elmore. Al to Mildred with all my love. There's a strange line of thought. And then there's Florence.
herself, the suicide, or maybe not. And the crazy landlady, Mrs. Fallbrook. And the fragrant Miss Fromsett. She has class, no question of that. But was I wrong to rule her out? Was she being too helpful? No police cars stand in front of Lavery's house. There's still time to do what I promised Kingsley to do. I push the front door open. I take the little automatic out of my pocket and I lay it on the table. Then I phone the police and tell them somebody's dead. And I'm there in the house. Then I wait. Not very long. I go to the front door and open it. There are 2 cops. One rushes rapidly to the bedroom. The other decides to interrogate me.
This the death gun here by the phone?
I should imagine so. It's been fired.
Huh. You should what?
I should imagine so.
That's very good. That's very good indeed.
It's not that good.
So, what did you shoot him for?
I've wondered and wondered.
Oh, a Weisenheimer.
Let's just wait for the homicide, boys. I'm reserving my defense.
Don't give me none of that.
I'm not giving you any of anything. If I had shot him, I wouldn't be here. I wouldn't have called up. You wouldn't have found the gun. Don't work so hard on the case. You won't be on it more than 10 minutes. See? The guy in charge now is Captain Weber, a small man for a cop, with a permanently tired expression. His companion is Lieutenant DeGarmo, the big cop who would not like my being in front of Dr. Almore's house. They examine the body. Then they come and examine me.
Okay. Who handled this gun?
I did.
Don't you know enough not to handle a weapon found at the scene of a crime?
Certainly, but when I handled it, I didn't know there had been a crime. I didn't know the gun had been fired. It was lying on the stairs, and I thought it had been dropped.
A likely story. You get a lot of that sort of thing in your business?
A lot of what sort of thing?
Suppose you answer my questions exactly as I choose to put them.
Look, Chief, the fellow in the bathroom's called Lavery. I knew him a little. He was a chaser.
What of it, Al?
Well, the whole setup indicates a dame. You know what these private eyes work at? Divorce stuff. Suppose we let him tie into it instead of just scaring him dumb.
If I'm scaring him, I'd like to know it. I don't see any signs of it. Talk.
So I tell him I'm working for Kingsley, and I'm trying to find Mrs. Kingsley, and Mrs. Kingsley had an interesting relationship with Chris Lavery, which is how I come to be here.
So, have you seen anything that suggests to you that this Kingsley woman's been here?
That's not a fair question. It calls for a conclusion of the witness.
I want an answer to it. This isn't a court of law.
And the answer is yes. If you fellows aren't a pack of fools, you'll be able to find that out for yourself. The women's clothes in the bedroom are tailored and easy to trace. I've just saved you an hour by telling you.
Anything else?
Chief? Forensics are here.
Okay. I want a lot of prints from all over the house, particularly any that seem to be made by a woman. It'll be a long job. Al, see if you can get any more sense out of Mr. Marlowe.
So Captain Weber goes off with the new arrivals, and I'm here alone with Lieutenant DeGarmo, which interests us both.
Well?
Well, what? Am I supposed to talk about our conversation outside Dr. Almore's? Or is that just a private transaction?
Talk about it all you like. It's our job to protect the citizen.
It's just, I know a bit more about Dr. Almore now. How Lavery knew Mrs. Almore, and she committed suicide, and he found her dead. The death was hushed up, so maybe Lavery was blackmailing your friend, Dr. Almore. Maybe Almore murdered his wife and had enough pull to get it fixed. What do I know?
Where's this crazy talk coming from?
You're a stupid man, DeGarmo. You had to get tough with me when there was nothing to get tough about. You had to make me curious when I had nothing to be curious about.
Be careful.
By the way, I heard Captain Weber call you Al.
Don't try and do the same.
I won't, because I don't think somehow we're going to be friends. But did you ever come across an L.A. cop called DeSoto?
The who? There's no guy of that name in the force.
Pity, because they told me up around Little Fawn Lake, where the Kingsleys have a place, that a cop had been up there asking questions about somebody called Mildred Haviland, who just happens to have been Dr. Almore's office nurse, who just happens to have found Mrs. Almore's body, and... He hits me across the face with his open hand. It jerks my head around hard.
Go on.
Who just happens to have found Mrs. Almore's body and may have been somebody called Muriel Chess, who's been found... His hand sweeps and knocks my head to one side again.
Anything else you want to say?
There are just too many crazy coincidences in this story.
Go on. Please.
Nope. Third time lucky. You might miss.
Listen. Anytime you talk like that to a cop, you know what you got coming. You keep poking your big nose into our business, and you wake up in an alley with the cats looking at you. Or worse. I'm watching you.
I remember that. Both ways. Back at the office, I bathe my face in cold water. The flush is gone from the left cheek, but it looks a little swollen. I brush my hair. There's getting to be plenty of gray in it. The face under the hair has a sick look. I don't like the face at all. Yeah?
Where the hell have you been? I've heard from Crystal.
I'll be right over.
You have to take this to her. $500. She wanted more, but this is all I could raise at short notice. She has to get out of town.
Out of what town?
Bay City somewhere. She'll meet you at a place called the Peacock Lounge on Arguello Boulevard at 8th Street, or near it.
What's the matter with her drawing her own money? Has her bank account got lockjaw or something?
That's no way to talk. She's in trouble. Lavery's death is going to be laid at her door, whatever happens.
Did you talk to her?
No. She called the office. Miss Fromset talked to her. Anyway, I didn't want to talk to her. She didn't want to talk to me. She had it all worked out. She realized the only way it would work was to have somebody bring the money she might not know. I admit it's a bit thick, but what about it?
It makes us accessories to the fact if she's guilty.
I'm going to make it worth your while. And we won't be accessories if she hasn't done anything.
I'm willing to suppose it. But if I decide she did do any murder, I'm going to turn her over to the police.
You're a pretty level guy, Marlowe.
Go on. Beat it. Just give me the money.
Oh, by the way, she's dyed her hair dark brown. Adrienne's described you to her, and you're to wear this scarf of mine she described to her, too.
I don't warm to the Peacock Bar. A wizened waiter with evil eyes and a face like a gnawed bone puts a napkin with a printed peacock down on the table and serves me a Bacardi cocktail. I sip it and wait.
You must be Marlowe.
I guess I'm easy to spot in here. Her face is white and tired. Her hair looks darker than dark brown.
Give me the money, please.
I'd have to know who you are.
You know who I am. How much did you bring?
500?
Oh, it's not enough. Not nearly enough. Give it to me quickly. I've been waiting half an eternity for somebody to get here.
Where can we talk?
We don't have to talk. Just give me the money.
It's not that simple. I'm doing this at quite a risk. I'm at least going to have the satisfaction of knowing what goes on and where I stand.
Damn you. Why couldn't he come himself?
You didn't want him to come himself. He understood that you didn't even want to talk to him on the phone.
That's right.
But you got to talk to me. Either to me or the law. I'm not as easy as he is. I'm a private detective, and I have to have some protection, too.
Well, isn't he charming? Private detective and all. What do you want to talk about?
You, and what you've been doing, and where you've been, and what you expect to do. Things like that, little things, but important.
I think it'd be much better if you just gave me the money.
No.
Very well, if it has to be that way. I'm at the Granada, 2 blocks north on 8th. Apartment 618. Give me 10 minutes. I'd rather go in alone.
I have a car.
I'd rather go alone.
I wait 10 minutes. The Granada is an ugly gray building on a corner. I go in and ride up to the 6th floor. The place seems decent enough. I come to the door of apartment 618. I knock softly.
Come in. Sit down and talk if you must.
Thank you. I sit on a thick Davenport. It's a square room with twin wall beds and a minimum of uninteresting furniture.
A small lamp makes a dim yellowish light. There's a dull green curtain hanging across an open door space at one end of the davenport. I guess it must lead to the dressing room and bedroom.
Can we get this over with, please?
I had a rather different idea of you from Kingsley. From Lavery, too. It just goes to show that we talk different languages to different people.
I haven't time for this sort of talk. What is it you have to know?
Your husband hired me to find you. So I know a bit about your movements. Not very much. I know you left your car at the Prescott Hotel in San Bernardino, and you met Lavery there. I know you sent a wire from El Paso. What did you do then?
I don't see that my movements are any of your business.
I don't have to argue about that. It's a question of whether you want the money.
Well, we went to El Paso. I thought of marrying him then, so I sent that wire. But I changed my mind. I asked him to go home and leave me. He made a scene.
What did you do then?
I went to Santa Barbara, stayed there a few days. Then to Pasadena, same thing. Then to Hollywood. Then I came down here. That's all.
You were alone all this time?
Yes.
Not with Lavery? Any part of it?
Not after he went home.
What was the idea?
Idea of what?
Idea of going these places and not sending any word. Didn't you know he would be very anxious?
Oh, you mean my husband? I don't think I worried much about him. As for the idea of it all, well, I just had to think things out. My life had got to be a hopeless tangle.
Before that, you spent a month in Little Fawn Lake trying to straighten it out and not getting anywhere. Is that it?
I seemed to need a new place. Without associations. A place where I could be very much alone. Like a hotel.
How are you getting on with it?
Not very well. But I'm not going back to DeRace Kingsley. Does he want me to?
I doubt it. What about Lavery?
He's all mixed up in my mind. I'm in love with him, and yet I don't think I want to marry him. Does that make sense?
That part makes sense. But staying away from home in a lot of crummy hotels doesn't. You've lived your own life for years, as I understand it.
I had to be alone to think things out. Won't you please give me the money and go away?
Sure, right away. But wasn't there... Any other reason for your going away from Little Fawn Lake? Anything connected with Muriel Chess, for instance?
What are you talking about? That frozen-faced little drip. What is she to me?
I thought you might have had a fight with her. About Bill.
Bill? Bill Chess?
Bill claims you made a pass at him.
Good heavens. That muddy-faced boozer. What's happened? Why all the mystery?
He might be a muddy-faced boozer. The police think he's a murderer, too. Of his wife. She's been found drowned in the lake after a month.
I'm not too surprised. So it came to that in the end. They fought terribly at times. Did you think that had something to do with my leaving?
There was a chance of it.
It didn't have anything to do with it at all. It was just the way I told you. Nothing else.
Muriel's dead. Drowned in the lake. You don't get much of a boot out of that, do you?
I hardly knew the girl.
I don't suppose you knew she once worked in Dr. Elmore's office.
I was never in Dr. Elmore's office. What are you talking about?
Muriel Chess was really a girl called Mildred Haviland, who had been Dr. Elmore's office nurse.
That's a queer coincidence.
Maybe it's a genuine coincidence. They do happen. But you see why I had to talk to you? Muriel being drowned, and you having gone away, and Muriel being Mildred Haviland, who was connected with Dr. Elmore at one time, as Lavery also was in a different way. And of course, Lavery lives across the street from Dr. Elmore.
I don't think Chris had anything to do with Dr. Elmore. He knew his wife, but I don't think he knew the doctor. So why would he know the doctor's office nurse?
Well, I guess there's nothing in all this to help me. But you can see why I had to talk to you. I guess I can give you the money now. I get the envelope out and stand up to drop it on her knee. She lets it lie there. I sit down again. You do this character very well. This confused innocence with an undertone of hardness and bitterness. Took me in for a while. People have made a bad mistake about you. They've been thinking of you as a reckless little idiot with no brains and no control. They've been very wrong. You did the Fallbrook character very well, too. Looking back on it, I think it was a shade overdone, but at the time, it got me all right. The purple hat, the messed up makeup, the jittery screwball manner. All very good. And when you put the gun in my hand like that, I felt like a brick.
So you think I shot Chris Lavery?
I don't think it. I know it. Who told you he was dead, anyway? Not me. Not Miss Fromsett.
And just what are you going to do about it?
Do about it? Turn you over to the police, naturally. It'll be a pleasure.
I don't think so.
A small smile lifts the corner of her mouth now. She puts her hands in the deep pockets of her coat.
You wondered why I gave you the empty gun. Why not? I had another one in my bag. Like this.
I never liked this scene. Detective confronts murderer. Murderer produces gun. Points same at detective. Murderer tells detective the whole sad story with the idea of shooting him at the end of it. Only murderer never does. Something always happens to prevent it. The gods don't like this scene either. They always manage to spoil it.
But this time, suppose we make it a little different. Suppose I don't tell you anything and nothing happens and I do shoot you.
It's too late at night. Too still, and the window's open, and the gun would make too much noise. Besides, you're not good with guns. You probably missed me. You missed Lavery 3 times.
Stand up.
I stand up.
I'm going to be too close to miss. Like this. I really can't miss now, can I? Now be very still. If you move at all, the gun will go off.
You're definitely not good with guns. You're too close to me. And I hate to bring this up, but there's that old business of the safety catch not being off. You've overlooked that, too.
She steps back. She's momentarily confused. I smash the gun out of her hand. We struggle. She's strong, but I'm stronger. Suddenly, it's all becoming clear. I finally understand. Then a figure looms up suddenly on my left. A big man. That's all I know. The scene explodes into fire and darkness. I finally come to. I'm lying flat on my back beside a davenport on somebody's carpet. The back of my head feels pulpy. I'm staring at a framed picture. Below it in large letters, "See the French Riviera by the Blue Train." A fine time to bring that up. Never sit with your back to a green curtain. It always turns out badly. I sense I am not alone in this room. I lift my head and look around. She's still here. She's lying on the pulled-down twin bed. She's wearing a pair of tan stockings and nothing else. There are dark bruises on her throat. Her eyes bulge, and the white of them is not white. And now I realize he's still here too. He should have gone, but he hasn't. Maybe he can't. He's staring at her as if he can't believe what he's done. A big guy standing there in the shadows.
Stay where you are.
DeGarmo pulls out a gun and points it at me. I'm used to this by now.
So when did you know?
Know what?
The lady in the lake wasn't Muriel Chess. Or Mildred Haviland as you knew her.
I wasn't sure. Till I followed you.
She killed Crystal Kingsley, threw her in the lake, and took over her identity. No wonder she didn't want to meet Mr. Kingsley.
I wish I'd found her when I went looking. Maybe it wouldn't have been like this.
Huh. She'd been lucky till now. Maybe she figured the body would stay submerged for a while, but when it came up, it was in such a state Bill Chess thought it was his wife.
Let them arrest him for her murder.
Then Lavery saw her at the hotel in San Bernardino wearing Crystal Kingsley's clothes and driving Crystal Kingsley's car. He could have told the police, but he decided to keep quiet. Maybe he saw an opportunity for some easy money holding back the truth. Huh. More luck. Because that decision meant his life wasn't worth a plug nickel.
She was never short of guts.
You were too much of a cop to let her get away with any more murders. But not enough of a cop to pull her in and let the whole story come out. Besides, you loved her.
I hated her.
You loved her too.
I was married to her once. She's not the sort of woman you forget. Or forgive.
What did Dr. Almore think?
What about him?
She had you all jumping through hoops. She's been his office nurse and his little pal, and I'm guessing she murdered Dr. Almore's wife in such a neat way that Almore had to cover up for her. You too. Did she want to marry him, or just blackmail him? Anyway, she was trying to touch him for money, wasn't she? So he sent you up to Fawn Lake looking for her.
I told you. I wish I'd found her.
So now there's 3 deaths at her door.
She's paid the price.
And how about you? Are you gonna pay the price?
Why should I, when you're around? I can set you up for this without any problem. Unconscious, soaked in gin, with a strangled woman in the bed.
So why haven't you gone yet?
I'm paying my last respects.
That's a strange way of putting it when you just strangled her.
Okay, I hated her and I loved her.
Huh. You called the cops?
No.
Someone in the building must have heard something then, because here they are.
There's still time to set you up.
Sure.
I can still cover my tracks.
Sure. But she was the woman you loved. And you killed her with your bare hands. How easy is that to live with?
Easy enough. I met guys who managed.
Huh. You one of them?
I'm not talking anymore.
Some guy.
I said I'm not talking anymore.
The gun is still pointing at me. I wait. Time is suspended. He doesn't shoot. Then his eyes turn to the dead woman. lies there at the foot of the bed. A cop who loved to kill her. Something that had been a man.
In The Lady in the Lake by Raymond Chandler, dramatized by Stephen Wyatt, Philip Marlowe was played by Toby Stevens, Mildred by Barbara Barnes, DeGarmo by Steve Toussaint, and Bill Chess by Nathan Osgood. Adrienne was played by Claire Harry, DeRace Kingsley by Sam Dale, and Lavery by Lloyd Thomas. The director was Claire Grove.